So worship. I believe that worship is the highest activity that we can engage in. It's natural and it's instinctive for us to worship. We only have to watch a Premier League football match, Elliot, or a rock concert on TV for us to realise that. That's worship. It's amazing how we all worship something. Everybody on the planet worships. We just have to make sure that our worship is going to the right person. In the Old Covenant, the Israelites were instructed to build altars, make sacrifices, and engage in prayer and praise in order to worship Yahweh. They had to go through a lot. Under the law received by Moses, Yahweh commanded the use of only 2 silver trumpets for Israel's call to worship, and that's in Numbers chapter 10. But when King David came along, he's my favourite person in the Bible, can't think why, but he is. He instructed the making of musical instruments for temple worship in Jerusalem. And Yahweh instructed David to establish worship with the musical instruments of Yahweh. Up until this point, there was no mention of instruments in tabernacle worship under Moses up until David came on the scene. Now today we're going to look at a lot. Are you sitting comfortably? We're going to look at a lot of scriptures. And the reason for this is because I think the Bible preaches sermons a lot better than I ever can. So I will be reading, and some of it will come up on the screen, and some of it won't. But I just think some of these stories in the scriptures, like the bit that Thomas and Tikva read, it's so exciting and it's so beautiful, and I can't improve on that. So, this is what I'd like to say today. The worship instigated by David and other master musicians in the scriptures can be accessible to us today. Through examining the impact of this breathtaking worship, we will see that we can reclaim it relevantly in the 21st century. That's quite a big statement, isn't it? I think that when we look at the Old Testament and how they worshipped, we might think, if we worship like that, we'll be stuck in a time warp. And how can you be contemporary and relevant to today's young people if you're doing temple worship? Isn't that too old-fashioned? But as we look at it, we'll understand that Yahweh's creations are timeless. And that one of these creations is the magnificent worship originated through David. So in order to understand this, we need to examine the worship of the first temple, the worship of the second temple, and temple quality worship in the 21st century. Is that all right? Okay, let's have a look at worship of the first temple. Now King David was a musical prophet who loved to play and sing, and he wrote hundreds of beautiful songs, a lot of which are in the Psalms. And after unifying all of Israel, David brought the Ark of the Covenant back to Jerusalem with the intention of building a temple. That was what was in his heart to do. Now, he received the blueprint for the temple, but did he build it? No, he didn't build it. And it was his son, actually, it was Solomon, that ended up building the temple. And I wonder how that made David feel. Do you think he would have felt disappointed because he couldn't build the temple? He amassed a lot of material for the temple, but he couldn't actually build it. And I just wondered how that would have made him feel. If he would have felt, a bit upset that Solomon, one of my kids, is doing what's really in my heart to do. I expect it kept him humble. But he did make a lot of musical instruments for the temple. So I'd like to look at 1 Chronicles chapter 15, verses 16 to 28. And I'm using the New American Standard Version. And we're going to start. Then David spoke to the chiefs of the Levites to appoint their relatives, the singers, with instruments of music, harps, lyres, loud-sounding cymbals to raise sounds of joy. So the Levites appointed Heman, Asaph, Ethan, Zechariah, Ben, Jabba, and the gatekeepers. I can't say half of these names, so I'm not even going to try. So the singers, Heman, Asaph, and Ethan, were appointed to sound aloud cymbals of bronze, and Zechariah and a few others with harps tuned to Alamoth. And Mattithiah and Eliphelahu and a few other people to lead with lyres, not liars, you know what I mean, lyres like on the picture, tuned to the Sheminith. Now I thought, what's the Alamoth and what's the Sheminith? And they think that Alamoth means soprano. What's a soprano person? Somebody like Eleanor. Come on, sing us a high note, Eleanor. Soprano. See, I couldn't hit that if I tried. Thank you. So what they did was they tuned their harps to a soprano sound. And the other people that had the lyres, they tuned theirs to the Sheminith, which means, can you guess? Bass. Right, who's bass? Daniel. Let's have a nice bass sound.
Then sings my soul, my Savior to thee.
Beautiful. Thank you. Now, Chenaniah, who is also one of my favourite people, his name means Yahweh establishes. He was the chief of the Levites and he was in charge of the singing. He gave instruction. Now, when I looked up the word instruction, it means chasten, discipline, instruct, admonish, right? So he didn't, let any of these singers get away with anything. He instructed them and he disciplined them and he helped them to become better than what they were. So he, instruction in singing because he was skillful. He was skillful. Chenaniah had a very responsible job, and it's not easy doing that sort of thing. It's not easy having a few singers in front of you and you know exactly what sound you want, don't you? Those of you that are involved in this, you know exactly what you want, and sometimes it's just not quite right. And you might say to somebody, no, you're sticking out too much. You sing this is what I used to get all the time. You're singing too loud. Sing a bit, try and blend with the people around you. And it's important that we allow ourselves to be disciplined and instructed when we're singing. Pardon? And if we go down to verse 23, Berechiah and Elkanah were gatekeepers for the ark. Now, that is a really responsible job too, and I might just mention that later. And then there's 7 people who were the priests. They blew the trumpets before the ark of Yahweh. Obed-Edom and Jehiah also were gatekeepers for the ark. So it was David with the elders of Israel and the captains over thousands who went to bring up the ark of the covenant of Yahweh from the house of Obed-Edom with joy, because Yahweh was helping the Levites who were carrying the ark of the covenant of Yahweh. They sacrificed 7 bulls and 7 rams. Now David was clothed in a robe of fine linen with all the Levites who were carrying the ark, and the singers, and Chenaniah the leader of the singing. With the singers, David also wore an ephod of linen. Thus all Israel brought up the ark of the covenant of Yahweh with shouting and with sounds of the horn, with trumpets, with loud-sounding cymbals, and with harps and lyres. Wouldn't you have loved to have heard that? So after this, David, of course, handed the task of building the temple to his son Solomon. And construction began around 970 BCE. King Solomon asked King Hiram of Tyre to provide him with skilled craftsmen and quality materials, as he was a friend of David and had built David's house for him. So Solomon built the temple and a palace for himself. And the 2 buildings took, anybody know how long they took to build? Like to guess? How many? What did you say, Jem? No, longer than that. Longer than that. 20 years it took. 20 years to build the temple, because it was so magnificent and it was so prescriptive. Everything had to be exactly right. All the tools and the utensils and everything, the altar and the laver and everything had to be exactly in the right place, exactly the right size, and the tools and the instruments that they used for the sacrifices and in the holy place had to be exactly right. And that takes time, that kind of craftsmanship. You don't get that anymore, really, do we? So, I want to go now to 2 Chronicles 5, which Tikva and Thomas read to us, so I'm not going to read it all, but I would just like to bring your attention to verse 11 of 2 Chronicles 5. It says, "When the priests came forth from the holy place, for all the priests who were present had sanctified themselves," and that word sanctified means set apart, consecrated and hallowed. So they had sanctified themselves without regard to divisions, and all the Levitical singers, Asaph. You want to know what Asaph means? It means gatherer or collector. He was a Levite, the chief of the singers appointed by David, who is celebrated in a later age as a poet and a prophet, to whom 12 psalms are ascribed in their titles, and whose descendants, even in the time of Ezra and Nehemiah, are mentioned as having occupied themselves with sacred verses and songs. Isn't that lovely? And then there was Heman. Now, Heman doesn't mean Heman. It means faithful. And he was a Levite of the family of the Kohathites, and he was a leader of David's choir. And then there was Jeduthun. And Jeduthun means praising. What great names. And I'm called Shirley. Wouldn't it be great to have those kind of names, like praising or lifting up or something like that? Jeduthun, like I said, means praising, and he was a Levite of the family of Merari. and the chief of one of the 3 choirs of the temple, whose descendants also formed one of the temple choirs. He is named at the beginning of 3 psalms, either as the composer or the recipient of those psalms, but most likely as the leader of the choir by which those psalms were to be sung. I love this stuff. And not only Asaph, Heman and Jeduthun, but their sons and kinsmen, clothed in fine linen, with cymbals, harps and lyres, standing east of the altar, and with them 120 priests blowing trumpets. How many people do you think are in this room? I've got no idea. Anybody like to hazard a guess? How many? About 90. Well, if we're 90, there would be another 30 people all standing, looking smart and fab with not that kind of a trumpet, and not even the one that Miriam was blowing. That's a shofar. These trumpets were silver trumpets, and they were straight. And they all stood and blew these trumpets, 120 Levites. What a sound that must have been. 120 trumpets all at once. It's incredible. And they blew these trumpets in unison. Yes, the straight trumpet is different from the shofar, and this kind of trumpet is a calling together with a trumpet. That's what the straight ones do. They call people together, and you can imagine they would. Everybody around about the temple would have heard that, wouldn't they? And it was in unison. And the word is echad. We know that word, don't we? Where do we know that word from? Yahweh is one. Shema Israel, yes. He's the echad. But this sound is the echad. It's one sound. One sound. And just now, when the guys were singing and playing, I was standing here and I was just behind Edwin. Right, so Edwin was here playing. Did you hear Edwin playing that clarinet? Did anybody notice it? It was beautiful. Honestly, we have some talent in the congregation. And Miriam was playing the cornet, and I was watching Trevor on the drums, and he was concentrating and really going for it. It was brilliant. And I was looking at Elliot playing the piano, and Elliot is getting so good on the piano. He really is. And then there were the singers, and it was actually one sound. Do you know that when there's one sound, Yahweh comes down, and he pours through these people that are making the one sound, and we can all feel that one sound because it's Echad. It's Yahweh. It's one. It's who he is. It's what he wants us to feel, what he wants us to experience when we're worshipping. Echad. When the trumpeters and the singers were to make themselves heard with one voice, to praise and to glorify Yahweh, and when they lifted up their voice, accompanied by trumpets and cymbals and instruments of music, and when they praised Yahweh, saying, "He indeed is good, for his loving kindness is everlasting," then the house of Yahweh, was filled with a cloud. I loved the way Tikva and Thomas did that. They said it 3 times. It was great. Filled with a cloud so that the priests could not stand up to minister because of the cloud. For the glory of Yahweh filled the house. If the glory of Yahweh was filling this house, we could sit anywhere. We could sit in the porch and still get it. That's what I want. I want to feel the glory of Yahweh going out and all of us getting it. The glory of Yahweh is wanting to fill the house. Yahweh's been speaking to me this week about this. And I'm just begging, Yahweh, make us right inside. Make us receptive. Make us the kind of people we ought to be, so that your glory fills the house like it filled the temple. It was an actual cloud. The glory means majesty, glory, splendor, the King of majesty. That's the glory. The King of majesty. The priest couldn't stand the weight of Yahweh's glory. Can fall on us. And it's a weight. It is an actual weight. Sometimes when you're singing and when you're playing, or sometimes when I'm playing the organ, I feel, I don't know how to describe it, but I feel something coming on me. And it's a weight, a literal weight on my heart and my stomach and just all around my body. I feel a weight, and I know it's Yahweh's Spirit. And when that happens to me, it doesn't happen to me that often, but when it happens, I don't know what to do with myself. I don't know what to do. The other day, when Jen was singing, and I was playing the organ, I just felt like I was going to burst and I was going to explode, because I could feel Yahweh's Spirit coming on me. And I didn't know what to do. So I started to laugh, because it was wonderful what I felt. It was like a release inside me that I could just let go. You know, sometimes we're so nice. We're such nice people. We come to church in our nice clothes and our nice hats, and we sit nicely. And I want to feel the glory of Yahweh filling the temple. I want to feel it. Eleanor, do you want to feel the glory of Yahweh? There used to be a time when we used to feel the weight of Yahweh's glory often. And I don't really understand why I don't feel the weight of Yahweh's glory as often as I should. But I know one thing, it's not Yahweh's fault. It's not his fault. It's not because he's gone off us. Leviticus 16, verse 2 says, "And Yahweh said unto Moses, Speak unto Aaron thy brother, that he come not at all times into the holy place within the veil, before the mercy seat which is upon the ark, that he die not. For I will appear in the cloud upon the mercy seat." I will appear in the cloud. Now, we don't have a mercy seat. We don't have an Ark of the Covenant here with the poles. But we are Yahweh's people. And we are the congregation of Yahweh. We have his name written in our hearts. And sometimes when we're playing and singing, I think we forget what a privilege it is that we have. We have a privilege, the privilege of having Yahweh's name on our lips so that we can pour out his Spirit. And we should use Yahweh's name. I'm sorry, but I'm standing up for Yahweh's name. I have a problem when we put God and Lord into things. I really have a problem with it. And I'm getting where I think it's fine for us to say to Yeshua, you are my Lord. That's fine. Because he is. He is my Lord. And Yahweh is my God. But I want to use their names. Because Yahweh has shared that with us. And not everybody has had that shared with them. But we have Yahweh's name written on our hearts. And it's important to use it. Do we realize what a privilege it is to lead Yahweh's people in worship through singing, dancing, and skillfully playing our instruments? Why does Yahweh's presence show up when the music's done right? Why? Because he's in it. Yahweh loves music. The stars sing. It says in the scriptures that the stars sing. Did you enjoy Craig's preach the other day when he was talking about the heavens and the earth? Oh, that knocked me for 6. The stars sing to Yahweh. We all know that whales sing. They communicate with each other. Do you know what? I think nature is singing to Yahweh. Yahweh loves song. He loves music. He loves it when he can feel music in us. You know, ever since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, I have loved music all my life. And I've always known, even before I got saved, years before I got saved, that something was in me for music. I've always known it. When I was a little kid of about 3, we used to sing in our house. Everybody's musical in our family, so we used to sing together. We used to sing anthems, and we used to sing. My dad used to play the piano, and we used to all sing, and it was fantastic. And I discovered I could sing harmony, and it was like an incredible gift had been given to me, and I knew it at 3 years old. Music is an amazing art form. It's an amazing way to communicate with people. Everybody loves music. You're driving along in your car and you hear music, boom, 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 don't you? In the next door car. And then in another car you might hear classical music, you might hear opera. I remember Gail saying to us once, where is she? There she is. Gail said to me once, she said, when I'm at lights and I hear them with the thump-thump music, she said, I open my windows and turn my music up so they can hear something about Yeshua. I think that's great. There's something special about music. Everybody loves it. All the talent shows that they put on about music. Why do you think that is? And some of these people that come on these talent shows like X Factor and The Voice, they come for the fame and they come for the big stadiums and singing to change my family's life. That's what they come for. But I don't know if you've noticed, but it's the people that come for the music that go far. They want to sing. There's something in them that wants to sing. Why? Because Yahweh's put it in them. It's a wonderful thing. Do I put as much time into practicing, she says, shamefaced, as I do playing games on my iPad. How many people here play games on your iPad or your tablet? Put your hand up. Come on! There's lots of you play games on your computer or on your phone or on something. Yes. Do I put that kind of time into music? Writing songs like I used to? Sorry? Oh, yes. Yes, before I had an iPad. Yes. For those of us who are called to a ministry of music, it's a sacrifice. I'm sorry I'm talking so much about music, but that's my thing. And that's the part of temple worship that I get. It's a sacrifice, but if I'm willing and committed to lead Yahweh's people in worship, then it's worth every second. 1 Chronicles 25 says, "The number who were trained in singing to Yahweh with all their relatives, all who were skillful, was 288. They cast lots for their duties, all alike, the small as well as the great, the teacher as well as the pupil. There were 4,000 Levites praising Yahweh with the instruments David had made for giving praise." How many instruments were there? 4,000. There were 4,000 Levites praising Yahweh with instruments. So there must have been 4,000 instruments, mustn't there? Imagine how long it took them to make. In the King James, it calls it a psaltery, right? But in the New American Standard, it's a lyre. And it's like a stringed instrument. And harps and cymbals. And trumpets. These instruments were dedicated for use in the temple and nothing else. So I was wondering about that, and I was thinking, I wonder if they had to go to the temple to practice. Because you can't just pick up an instrument and play it. You've got to learn how to play it. And learning how to play an instrument takes commitment. Lots of commitment, doesn't it, Miriam? Miriam's learning to play the clarinet. And she can really play it. Did you know that? She can play the clarinet. And it takes commitment to learn to play an instrument, to learn to sing, to learn to dance, to learn to mime, to learn to act, to learn to paint, to learn to write books. These are all the arts. And it takes time. And these Levites wouldn't have just gone into the temple, "Oh yeah, I fancy this one, let's play it," and sit down and play it. I don't quite know how they played it. If they plucked the strings, I'm not sure. No, they would have had to have learnt it. That was part of their job. They were expected to attend training where they honed their skills. Some of the sons of Asaph, Jeduthun and Heman, were set apart and instructed by David to prophesy on their instruments. Now, there's a thing. When Daddy Peter was still looking after our church, that's Val's dad, he used to do little plans, little handwritten plans on little scrappy bits of paper, about like that, in fact smaller than that, and he used to just write, he used to get it from Yahweh and he'd just write it. And one day he put on the plan that I'd got to prophesy on the organ. And I thought, prophesy on the organ? How do I prophesy on the organ? Frightened me to death. But you know, you put your shoulders back and you go on your face for 2 hours before the meeting, and then you get up and you sit at the organ haven't got a clue what you're doing. Not a clue. Not a clue. And I sat and played, and I thought, well, I better shut my eyes. So I shut my eyes. And lo and behold, Yahweh spoke to me. And I prophesied on the organ. And I did that a few times. Those of you that do plans, please don't put me down to prophesy on the organ. But I was thinking about Elliot and, Miriam and Elliot, how about it? Prophesy on the piano. What did he say? Maybe one day, not right now. Well, that's what I thought, but I was wrong. Yes, prophesy on their instruments. They were instructed to do it. Now, I believe that you can prophesy on an instrument without opening your mouth. I believe you can play an instrument and you can be prophesying as you're playing. Because what if you're playing a trumpet and you're told to prophesy on your instrument? You can't say anything because you're playing. But it's a great thing to prophesy on an instrument. And you know what? Sometimes when some of our singers get up, somebody like Jem or Samuel or Esme or Eleanor or Sharon, they get up and when they sing, sometimes that's the spirit of prophecy. And you can feel the spirit of prophecy. If you tune in, you can feel a spirit of prophecy. And you know that that person is actually prophesying as they're singing. It can be done. And it needs to be done. We should be doing these things. Yes. These people, these Levites, were divided into 24 teams, which matched those of the priests. And each team ministered before Yahweh for 2 weeks every year. 2 weeks. And the major feasts. And the Day of Atonement. And first fruits. So they only actually got the chance to play and sing for about 3.5 weeks, 4 weeks, in a year. But they still had to be on the ball when it was their turn. So what do you think they did for the rest of the year? Do you think they went out and I don't know, got drunk and what do you think they did? They would have to practice. Practice and practice and practice because it's my turn in 5 months. And I want it to be perfect. I want it to be spot on because Yahweh's put me in this job. And he expects me and my offering to him to be excellent and beautiful and prophetic and Levitical. They were made up, these people, of 24 musicians, plus their relatives and sons, 12 people each, which came to 288. Skilled, trained, Levitical singers and musicians. Now, I just want to read you a little add-on from 1 Chronicles 25. Moreover, David and the commanders of the army set apart for the service some of the sons of Asaph and of Heman and of Jeduthun, who were to prophesy with lyres, harps and cymbals. And the number of those who performed their service was, of the sons of Asaph, so-and-so, so-and-so. The sons of Asaph were under the direction of Asaph, who prophesied under the direction of the king. So King David would give Asaph his orders, and then Asaph would give his sons their orders to prophesy. Interesting, isn't it? How you can be actually instructed to prophesy on your instrument. And it was the same with Jeduthun, and it was the same with Heman. In fact, all these were the sons of Heman, the king's seer, to exalt him according to the words of Yahweh. For Yahweh gave 14 sons and 3 daughters to Heman. All these were under the direction of their father to sing in the house of Yahweh with cymbals, harps, and lyres, for the service of the house of Yahweh. Yay! 3 daughters. Gem. Girls. And we note that Asaph, Jeduthun, and Heman were responsible in training and directing their sons and daughters, but that they, in turn, were responsible to Yahweh. Now, we're going to go ahead a bit now in history. Solomon's temple, as you know, was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar in 587 BCE. And this temple, according to Josephus, in his Antiquities of the Jews, claims that the temple was burnt 470 years, 6 months and 10 days after it was built. So it was completely destroyed. And there were lots of horrible kings came after and didn't do a thing with the temple. But then there was a new king. Anybody know who it was? Who? No. Well, you know, because you read my notes. I'm not giving you a ticket for that. It was Hezekiah. When he came to the throne in about 715 BC, it was a very dark time at that time for Judah. It had been nearly 300 years since David was king over a united Israel. But Hezekiah was a good king. And when he came to the throne, the temple was just in a mess, an absolute mess. And Hezekiah decided to fix it. He was an amazing king. So he became king when he was 25. He reigned for 29 years in Jerusalem. He did right in Yahweh's eyes according to all that his ancestor David had done. And in the first year of his reign, in the first month, he opened the doors of the house of Yahweh and repaired them. That was his first job. And then he brought in the priests and the Levites and gathered them into the square. And in verse 5 of 2 Chronicles chapter 29, it says, he said to them, "Listen to me, O Levites, consecrate yourselves now." Don't forget that the Levites hadn't been doing anything during all this time. "And consecrate the house of Yahweh, the Elohim of your fathers, and carry the uncleanness out from the holy place. For our fathers have been unfaithful and have done evil in the sight of Yahweh and have forsaken him and turned their faces away from this dwelling place of Yahweh and have turned their backs. They have also shut the doors of the porch and put out the lamps and have not burnt incense or offered burnt offerings in the holy place to the Elohim of Israel. Therefore, the wrath of Yahweh has been against Judah and Jerusalem, and he has made them an object of terror, of horror, and of hissing, as you see with your own eyes. For behold, our fathers have fallen by the sword, and our sons and our daughters and our wives are in captivity. Now it is in my heart to make a covenant with Yahweh, that his burning anger may turn away from us. My sons, do not be negligent now, for Yahweh has chosen you to stand before him, to minister to him, and to be his ministers and burn incense." So the Levites assembled their brothers, consecrated themselves, and went in to cleanse the house of Yahweh. They went to the inner part to cleanse it, And every unclean thing which they found in the temple of Yahweh, they brought out to the court of the house of Yahweh. And they carried it out to the Kidron Valley and left it there. And then they consecrated the temple in 8 days and finished on the 16th day of the first month of Hezekiah's reign. He really meant it. Then they went to King Hezekiah and said, "We have cleansed the whole house of Yahweh, the altar of burnt offering with all its utensils, and the table of showbread with all its utensils. Moreover, all the utensils which King Ahaz, nasty king, had discarded during his reign in his unfaithfulness, we have prepared and consecrated. And behold, they are before the altar of Yahweh." The Levites had a job to do, and it was a big job. But they were obedient to King Hezekiah, and they started again to sacrifice, do burnt offerings, which purged the altar and the temple. It's incredible. That first temple was incredible. And I would have loved to be a fly on the wall, to see it and experience it and feel it. Do you think we can? Do you think we can feel it? Do you think we can be part of it? You don't sound very convinced. Who wants to be part of that? Yo, Richard, I've just seen you. Let's have a look at the second temple. 50 years after the destruction, of course, the temple was razed to the ground again after Hezekiah. 50 years after the destruction of the first temple, the Babylonians, who had destroyed the temple, were vanquished by the rising Persian Empire. And the king of the Persians, Cyrus the Great, soon authorized the Jews, because he was reigning over them at this time, to rebuild the temple. But construction ground to a halt due to interference by the Samaritans. That's a whole other story, which I won't go into. In 353 BCE, exactly 70 years after the destruction of the first temple, they began to build it again. At first, independently, the Jews got together and started to build this temple. But then King Darius, who was the next king of Persia from King Cyrus, soon sanctioned their effort. In other words, he says, yeah, get on with it. It's a good idea. And the second temple was completed in 349 BCE. Under the leadership of Ezra and Nehemiah, the community in Judea became vibrant again and secure again. The Second Temple era spanned 420 years, ending with the Romans' destruction of the temple in 70 AD. For much of this period, Judea was under foreign domination. First, the Jews were ruled by the Persians, and then after Alexander the Great, they were ruled by the Greeks. And then there was a Hasmonean revolt, which was a type of Roman, in 140 BCE, which brought about a period of Jewish monarchy. The Second Temple was an important temple which stood on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, which some of you have seen. I've never seen the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, but what's there at the moment? A mosque. It was there on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem between 516 BCE and 70 CE. The Levites of the Second Temple had specific roles to play, including being worship leaders, choir directors, and song leaders in the temple. And this is very clear in the book of Nehemiah. Nehemiah 9, verses 4 to 5 says, "Standing on the stairs of the temple were the Levites, Jeshua, Bani, Kadmiel, Shebaniah, Bani, Sherebiah, Bani, and Kanani." That's got a nice ring to it, hasn't it? Barney and Kanani, who called with loud voices, and that word loud translates loud and intense, to Yahweh their Elohim. And the Levites, Jeshua, Kadmiel, Barney, somebody, Sherebiah, Hodiah, Shebaniah, and Pethahiah, said, "Stand up and praise Yahweh your Elohim, who is from everlasting to everlasting. Blessed be your glorious name, and may it be exalted above all blessing and praise." Let's all stand up and say that. You all look like you're going to sleep. Right. Stand up and praise Yahweh your Elohim, who is from everlasting to everlasting. Blessed be your glorious name, and may it be exalted above all blessing and praise. Hallelujah! Hallelujah! There were songwriters and worship leaders. Nehemiah 12 verses 8 and 9 says that there were all these names again, who together with their associates were in charge of the songs of thanksgiving. And then there were musicians and singers only appointed when purified. They had to bathe in the crystal sea, or the laver. That's where they had to bathe, and they had to make offerings as well to consecrate themselves. At the dedication of the wall of Jerusalem, this is Nehemiah, the Levites were sought out from where they lived and were brought to Jerusalem to celebrate joyfully the dedication with songs of thanksgiving and with the music of cymbals, harps, and lyres. The singers also were brought together from the region around Jerusalem, from the village of the Netophathites, from Beth Gilgal, and from the area of Geba and Asmatheth. Listen to this, for the singers had built villages for themselves around Jerusalem. How cool is that? Fancy living in a village full of Levitical singers. Wouldn't that be great, Elliot? Yeah. Catch up. Yes, it would. Everybody of like mind. Everybody wanting to serve Yahweh and sing. Oh. When the priests and Levites had purified themselves ceremonially, they purified the people, the gates, and the wall. I, that's Nehemiah, had the leaders of Judah go up on top of the wall. I also assigned 2 large choirs to give thanks. Oh boy. It's an acclaim, a choir of singers. I wonder how big those large choirs were. One was to proceed on top of the wall to the right, toward the dung gate. Hoshiah and half the leaders of Judah followed them, along with some more people, as well as some priests with trumpets, and also Zechariah, son of Jonathan, the son of, going all the way back to the son of Asaph, and his associates, so-and-so, so-and-so, with musical instruments prescribed by David, the man of Yahweh. Then later, on that day, they offered great sacrifices, rejoicing because Yahweh had given them great joy. The women and children also rejoiced. That's nice. The sound of rejoicing in Jerusalem could be heard far away. At that time, men were appointed to be in charge of the storerooms for the contributions, first fruits, and tithes. From the fields around the towns, they were to bring into the storerooms the portions required by the law for the priests and the Levites, for Judah was pleased with the ministering priests and Levites. They performed the service of their Elohim and the service of purification, as did also the singers and gatekeepers, according to the commands of David and his son Solomon. For long ago, in the days of David and Asaph, There had been directors for the singers and for the songs of praise and thanksgiving to Yahweh. It just goes right through this singing business and this playing instruments and sacrificing, and it just goes right through. The priests and the Levites had to purify themselves or they couldn't serve. This meant they had to wash and give offerings in order to be pure. It's important we're pure if we're called to serve Yahweh in this way. If I believe I'm a priest or a Levite, and we all know the scripture in Peter that says we are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, that doesn't exclude anybody. It's imperative that we are pure before we serve Yahweh by leading the people into worship. Our hearts and minds must be pure and sanctified if we feel our calling is in this area. If you're just moving into this area, it's important that you know that from the outset, that you have to be pure and consecrated, set apart before Yahweh. Ellicott's commentary states, before consecration to Yahweh, there must be purification from defilement. It is made emphatic that both priests and Levites purified themselves, that is, by offerings and ablutions, the gates and the wall by being sprinkled. Matthew Henry says, all our cities, all our houses must have holiness to Yahweh written upon them. The believer should undertake nothing which he does not dedicate to Yahweh. If you're doing anything in your life which you can't bring Yahweh in on, and you're serious about serving him, then you shouldn't be doing that thing. It's not me that says this, it's the book. It's important that we can bring Yahweh into every area of my life. My family, my social life, my church life, my work life, my community life. It's important that all of those areas we're not ashamed to go in front of Yahweh. Especially if we're called to serve him in this area. It's important. We are concerned to cleanse our hands and purify our hearts when any work for Yahweh is to pass through them. Those that would be employed to sanctify others must sanctify themselves. Just as an aside, we watched this film, Left Behind, and one of the saddest parts of the film was that this lady ran to the church to see who was there because it was the rapture and they'd all been taken and all this. But when she got there, the only person that hadn't gone and that was left behind was the preacher. And he was in bits because he knew that he'd managed to get them ready, but he wasn't ready. And that was the saddest part for me. You know, and I can be doing all the right things, I can be saying all the right things, I can be singing and praying and praising and preaching and prophesying, but if my heart's not sanctified, and if I'm not set apart, then it's not worth doing. You might as well go and do something else. So Yahweh wants us to be pure and holy. I firmly believe that musical Levites are still in existence today because of what Yeshua did at Calvary and because we are grafted into the olive tree. I believe I am a musical Levite. I believe I am a musical Levite. I believe it. No, I'm not Jewish. I'm certainly not from the tribe of Levi. But because of the fact that I've been grafted in, I can say, because of the call that's on my life, that I am a musical Levite. And there's been times when I've tried to run away from that and try and be something else. But my first love is music. That's my first love. Always will be. And when I've tried to push it back and say, no, let the young'uns do it. I'm 61. I don't want to be doing this. Let Elliot do it. Let Pritam and all the young'uns do it. I don't need to. But do you know what? I'm a musical Levite. I will be till I'm 99. I'll still be a musical Levite. And I'll be playing the organ. I don't know if I'll play the organ. But I'll always be a musical Levite. Because that's what Yahweh's called me to be. And sometimes we kick against what Yahweh's called us to be and called us to do. Yahweh may have called you to be a pastor like Isaac. And I know he's my husband, but he's a pastor through and through. And he loves it. He loves being a pastor. He loves you all. I love you all, but he loves you in a kind of special way. And he notices things that I don't see. And it's because he's called to be a pastor. If he tries to be anything else, it won't work. Now, I'm not saying that he's not a musical Levite. I'm definitely not saying that. But his first love is being a pastor, isn't it? He thrives on it. He loves small groups and talking to people after the meeting. Because that's who he is. That's his call. Yahweh has called us to do a job. And if you don't know what that is, you need to find out. Some of us have been here like me for donkey's years. And if I don't yet know what I'm meant to be doing, then it's time I got on my face and found out from Yahweh. Whoever believes they are called to serve, we have an obligation to be pure, holy, sanctified. What Elliot said about when he read out about the lad that wanted to be on the worship team and ended up cleaning the toilets and doing the hoovering, I thought, that's incredible, because another thing I've put here is willing to work in any area that needs them. So just because I'm a musical Levite doesn't mean I can't clean the toilets. I can still clean the toilets. I'm still a wife and a mother. I still have a house to look after. I still have to do the shopping and the ironing and the washing. But I know who I am. I don't have any doubt. I know who I am. Do you know who you are? Craig, I'm glad you know who you are. Boy, I've enjoyed drinking from Craig's well this feast. What an amazing young man. And it's because he knows who he is, and he's learning, and he's growing, and he's finding who he is called to be and what kind of prophet he is. We should be committed to our calling at all times and ready to serve at the drop of a hat. This week has been busy, hasn't it, Eleanor? We've been practicing and coming at all sorts of weird times to practice. But that's our job. It's who we are. We should expect it. And if I have to come 3 times in one day, it's just the way it is. I'm a musical Levite. It's hard work. Lastly, let's have a quick look at music in the 21st century. I'm sorry I'm being so long. What are our responsibilities as 21st century worshippers? Now, Elliot gave me that. Can you just go back to the previous one? And it's not even in my notes, but it's good. This is somebody called Tim Hughes, and he is a British worship leader and singer-songwriter. If you are involved in leading worship or playing in a worship team, the most important thing you can do to be effective in your ministry is to seek after Yahweh and to chase after a glimpse of his glory. Isn't that cracking? To chase after the glory. Your hunger for the glory. Your tongue's hanging out for the glory. You're crawling along wanting the glory. Sometimes it takes that kind of commitment. It takes being on your face for 2 hours. Can we possibly engage in temple worship? What does being a musical Levite mean for me? Do I need to be holy, consecrated? Holy means consecrated, saintly, sacred, awe-inspiring, hallowed, sanctified, blessed. That's who I should be. The Levites of old were carriers of Yahweh's presence. When they carried the Ark of the Covenant and the cherubim, where was Yahweh's glory? On the mercy seat between the cherubim. I believe that this is the main responsibility for 21st century Levites. How can I be a carrier of his presence? I need to be aware of his presence continually in mind, heart, soul, spirit, and body. I will then be able to raise the ordinary to the extraordinary. I can worship with creative brilliance like the Levites of old did. Before each meeting, the worship team prays and practices the worship songs. And Eleanor this week has been asking us to pray, but she's been asking us to walk round and cover every corner. That's what she says. We need to cover every corner. And I think that's brilliant. Because when we're walking around praying and asking Yahweh to help us, and asking Yahweh to anoint us and inspire us and cleanse us and make us worthy to carry his presence, we are depositing his presence as we are walking. I believe that. We can be carriers of Yahweh's presence. The blood of Yeshua enables us to be clean and kept clean. Nothing else. I can't do it myself. Revelation 1, verse 4 to 6. I'm going to start reading at verse 5. From Yeshua the Messiah, the faithful witness, the firstborn of the dead and the ruler of the kings of the earth, to him who loves us and released us from our sins by his blood and has made us to be a kingdom, priests to his God and Father. The King James says kings and priests. He has called us to be kings and priests. Now, does that mean that some of us are kings and some of us are priests, or does it mean that we're all kings and priests? I don't really know. But we're carriers of Yahweh's presence, all of us. Whether we're called to this kind of ministry or not, we are carriers of Yahweh's presence. Like I said earlier, it's instinctive for human beings to worship. It's in our DNA. We can't help it. The Levites of old knew how to worship, and a lot of that was about building altars and sacrifices and washing and prayer and singing and playing instruments. Since Yeshua died, we don't have to build altars and sacrifice, but we do need to make inner sacrifices and worship Yahweh in spirit and in truth. Hebrews 13:15 says, "Through him then, let us continually offer up a sacrifice of praise to Yahweh, that is, the fruit of lips that give thanks to his name." Does worship sometimes feel like a sacrifice when we come to the meeting and we're just so tired? And the worship people are up here and we think, oh, I can't stand up, I'm too tired. Do you ever feel like that? Yes, of course. Of course we do, we're just humans. It's a sacrifice. It is. Worship is a sacrifice. And what Elliot was saying is that you can worship Yahweh on the bus. You can worship Yahweh in the kitchen, at work. You don't have to be here to worship Yahweh. Yeshua said, the Samaritan woman said to Yeshua, "Our fathers worshipped in this mountain, and you people say that in Jerusalem is the place where men ought to worship." Yeshua said to her, "Woman, believe me, an hour is coming when neither in this mountain nor in Jerusalem will you worship the Father. You worship what you don't know. We worship what we do know." And that word worship means to kiss the hand towards somebody, to reverence. Among the Orientals, it means to fall upon the knees and touch the ground with the forehead. That's the kind of worship. And it's either in order to express respect or to make supplication. Yeshua said, "An hour is coming," to this Samaritan woman, "and now is when the true worshippers will worship the Father in spirit," that's talking about the Holy Spirit, "and in truth. For such people the Father seeks to be his worshippers. Yahweh is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth." How do we worship in truth? Being part of this congregation means we have to live clear, transparent, set-apart lives worthy of ministering to Yahweh's people. The Levites sang, as we heard before, and ministered by course. In other words, they only did it at some times. I wonder if sometimes we are on course at times. I wonder if you're on course. Sometimes you know if you're on course. And this doesn't just happen to singers and musicians. Somebody might preach and you know they're on course. It's like they're in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing, and being blessed by Yahweh and blessing the people. And lastly, should we be writing our own songs? What do you think? How many of you have ever written a song about Yeshua? I think it's time Elliot started writing some songs. Have you really not written any songs, Elliot? No. Pray for Elliot. Psalm 98 says, "Oh, sing to Yahweh a new song." Psalm 33 says, "Sing praises to him and sing to him a new song." New songs are new. I wrote my first song when I was 13. And it was called, "I Have Found a Refuge for My Soul." Got all these wonderful people. Should we be writing our own songs? At first, my songs were testimony songs, but after a while, I started putting music to scripture. And that was really special. There's something wonderful about digging into your own soul, stirring up your Levitical gift, and producing a song either set to scripture or written out of the depth of your own experience. So can we have temple quality worship in the 20th century? We haven't got lyres and harps. I think, sorry Elliot, I keep picking on you, but I think that Elliot's vision is to have an orchestra. We may not have harps and lyres, but we can use modern instruments and still worship with temple worship. We can use electric guitars, pianos, keyboards, organs, drums, percussion instruments. Beautiful! Percussion instruments, brass instruments, trumpets, French horns, trombones, tubas, cornets, clarinets, oboes, bassoons, flutes and piccolos, violins, violas, string basses and cellos, and you can go on and on. My vision is to have a big band playing again like we used to have, only better, much better. People that commit to learning an instrument. I encourage all musical Levites to prostrate yourselves before Yahweh and find something new in your delivery so that you can minister to Yahweh's people in spirit and in truth. We've been on a journey today, one which includes first and second temple worship and also 21st century worship. We as a congregation have always stood out because of our worship and the depth of our music. We need to discover that, rediscover that, and get deeper and deeper into true temple worship. Let's pray for one another, that we might find the glory in our service. Yahweh bless you.